Everyone was expecting things to start out red and then turn blue sort of overnight as we start getting in other votes from different areas.
Let's look at Michigan. Right now, with about a third of the expected vote in, the president is ahead in Michigan.
If you're not super familiar with the process,
So it's going to be a kind of back and forth.
so you go to bed Tuesday night and everything looks good for Trump, and you wake up the next morning and things are looking better for Joe Biden.
This is 5 a.m. One more. Michigan as well.
Trump was saying, well, this had to be fraud because, you know, at 10:30 we were ahead by 100,000 votes, and then by 2 o'clock in the morning, now all of a sudden we're behind by 100,000 votes.
We're just getting this. These are people bringing them in coolers. There's no one around.
We started seeing evidence online that these were magic votes, you know, that somebody showed up somewhere with a whole bunch of blue votes.
Looks like one of those lock boxes. I wish I could tell.
Yeah, there were a number of viral images and videos purporting to show mysterious suitcases and wagons being brought into the TCF Center carrying ballots. So one of them actually turned out to be a WXYZ photographer carrying in his camera equipment.
I think all the polling places were closed. And yet we have a box.
All of this happened where people felt like, you know, something happened in the dead of night.
There were thousands of ballots that arrived at the TCF Center early in the morning on Wednesday, November 4th.
All right, could you please state your name?
My name is Shane Trejo.
What days this year were you involved with the election?
I served as a poll challenger on the night shift after the election had concluded. So I was there at TCF as a poll challenger. The ballots showed up at the dead of night at 3:30 a.m. 61 boxes of mystery ballots show up from the city clerk's office. There was no chain of custody, no transparency, no accountability. No one would answer any questions about where they came from. And in my opinion, this was when they started the vote steal and to take this away from President Trump, because
early in the morning on Wednesday, November 4th, far from being a sign of anything nefarious, it's actually a sign of the system working as intended. Election officials had warned that it was going to take a while for all of the ballot verification steps to be completed.
If you don't understand how their process works, then it's easy for somebody to say, oh, I saw a van pull up in the middle of the night and unload a bunch of boxes, and you to be like, see, there was something going on there, even if, you know, there's nothing nefarious about it. That's just the process.
Let's see, that's where we're at, folks.
Introduce yourself, tell us where we're at.
All right, I am Theresa Baldus. I'm a reporter of the Detroit Free Press, and I am reporting live from the TCF Center behind me, as I said, where they are counting. The city of Detroit has 25,000 absentee ballots that are still being counted. They anticipate that this will be counted by the end of the night. Also, 96% of the votes in Michigan have been counted now.
That night, or actually it started the day when they said, you know, you keep hearing this call, get to the TCF, get to the TCF.
We are witnessing what everyone expected to be a historic vote count.
And this was intense. I mean, election day became election week. And we were prepared for it to be election week. It became election month.
That was one of the biggest epiphanies I had after the 2020 election, was just how many people needed to go back to civics class and understand how an election works and how it runs, because for most people it's just one of those things that happens behind closed doors. It's the sausage making, and all they know is they go pick it out and then they cook it and eat it.
All eyes are on the city of Detroit as the Biden campaign hopes and has counted on the largely African-American vote in Detroit to pull Biden through.
The reporters are down there, they're watching it because no one's ever seen anything like this. You know, this is all new for everyone, quite frankly. And I've covered lots of presidential campaigns, and this was just something that was unprecedented.
As the presidential campaign started to ramp up, you had President Trump saying, you know, the only way I'm going to lose to this guy is if the election is stolen, if the election is rigged.
The ballots are out of control. You know it. And you know who knows it better than anybody else? The Democrats know it better than anybody else. Go ahead.
That idea was kind of baked in even before they started counting the votes.
The pandemic kept a lot of people from going to the polls personally. And then, of course, you had Donald Trump encouraging his supporters, no, don't vote absentee, go to the polls. And so those two dynamics were playing out on election night.
We also had a record turnout in Detroit, the most in 20 years, even from the Obama presidency, a 55% voter turnout.
I think anybody that's watched Michigan politics for more than like a week understands that Detroit is a Democratic hotspot. There are not hundreds of thousands of Republican votes to get out of Detroit. Wayne County hasn't gone for a Republican president since Herbert Hoover in the 20s. Nobody in Michigan watching politics thought that Donald Trump had any chance to do anything in Detroit or in Wayne County. And yet, almost the entirety of the focus of alleged fraud in Michigan focused on TCF Center, where only ballots in Detroit were being counted, not in Wayne County, just in Detroit.
I remember an email going out to conservative activists saying, you've got to get down to Detroit, there's something happening down there.
There were messages spreading around in Republican circles to go storm TCF Center because Biden was pulling ahead of Trump and to observe the count and make sure that nothing nefarious was happening in Detroit.
And all of a sudden, just this crowd of people starting to just merge onto the scene there.
That day started out, I mean, it was crazy. I went in there and I was shocked at how easy we could get in. They had a spot designated for the media. We were all standing, you know, there were more than 100 of us. National media was in a corner.
Using a long lens because we are behind this orange tape line.
We're really far back from the counting, and we're not there to distract, but it is harder to cover in a granular way. And so we really just wanted people to be part of watching this vote count.
We're staying live just ahead. You, the public, our readers, our viewers, our subscribers, keep an eye on the process here.
But there's this massive room with tables, and people are all counting the ballots. But just roaming freely on the floor were all these challengers, hundreds of them.
Where are you from?
Oh, I'm from downriver.
Okay.
I'm here because of the 38,000 ballots that arrived here at 3:45 a.m. They're just now sitting over there and getting counted, supposedly.
Okay.
And that's why I arrived.
Okay.
And I didn't quite process that. Wait, these people are just regular, normal people off the street who walked in here, presented a badge with whatever party they were with, and said, I'm a challenger. There was no security to go through, no metal detectors. Anybody could have gone in with anything. And it was a little bit nerve-wracking. So finally, I stood at this table and I said to the woman, what are you doing? She said, I'm checking in people as they come in. So I decided to stand there and count them as they came in, you know, and then the numbers were going up and up and up and up. The craziest it got were in the middle of folks counting the ballots, you'd get a big group of Republican challengers that would form a circle around one table.
Some chanting going on.
And they'd start chanting, stop the count, and clapping as they did it.
And as you can see right now, we've got several police officers heading out there on the floor.
And the police would come in, they'd escort them out.
The number of Republican vote watchers were removed from the hall. And so a group of angry protesters came down and started banging on the windows of the basement of, you know, where we were at.
And then you'd have people complaining, we got kicked out of the process. Well, you were chanting in the middle of the floor and causing a scene.
We want all the Republican challengers out of this room. Everybody standing in this area.
A lot of conspiracy theories that were being thrown at us. And there was also a directive from folks. They said, challenge everything. Challenge every ballot. And they were doing it. They were, you know, well, this doesn't look good because of this or because of that. And at some point, you know, someone had to step in and say enough.
So all of this fervor is kind of coming up around Detroit and focusing on Detroit. Obviously a Democratic apparatus and supposedly, you know, part of this cabal to undermine the election. And so this is happening. Lawsuits are starting to come out. Lawsuits that have national resonance are being filed in Michigan.
The campaign says it has, quote, not been provided with meaningful access to numerous counting locations to observe the opening of ballots and the counting process as guaranteed by Michigan law. Now, it's asking the state's Court of Claims to stop counting ballots until, quote, meaningful access has been granted.
I've been trying to talk to some of these challengers who are out here. Some of them are very skittish about talking, but what we are learning is that the people who are getting thrown out, and several have been now escorted out of here, what they're doing is one of the following. They either are getting too close, or they're going up behind people and they're saying things like, listen, I'm challenging this ballot, there's litigation. I'm challenging this ballot, there's litigation. They keep citing that there's litigation out there. Well, there are lawyers working at these tables, and they will look at these challenges and say, you know what? It doesn't matter if there's litigation out there, this ballot is being counted.
There's wall-to-wall people in here. Nothing is being obscured about this process. We are all watching it. We're observing it. The citizens of Michigan, the media.
I'm Mandy Wright with the Detroit Free Press. I'm outside of the TCF absentee ballot counting, and there are several poll watchers who are really disgruntled right now.
So the next thing you know, you see more police presence, and they decide that the room is getting too filled.
They're at capacity now. As soon as they count down, they'll let some people in. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, I need you just to step back a little bit. Thank you. Make a hole so people can come in and out of the building, emergency personnel.
Behind these glass doors and a glass wall, they were telling people, we're closing down the room, you can't come back in.
At this point, we have 134 spots for each group. 134 Republicans, partisan, 134 Democrat, partisan, 134 nonpartisan. That is the max, okay?
Summer Woods, she was the person who was in charge of maintaining order inside the hall, keeping it fair and square in terms of who was at each table watching these vote counters.
So at this point, we are not letting any more affiliations to the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. And we only have spots for about 52 more people in non-partisanship group.
What about the people who did not sign
So,
out?
what
about the people who did not sign out?
Everybody stop. So, at the end of the day,
She tried to calm the crowd down by talking very specifically about what was happening and who was allowed in and who wasn't. And we're also dealing with COVID too. So it was also like balancing the safety numbers too.
I need for you all, hold on.
Well, people started to lose their minds.
You don't know what a socialist country is.
Screaming, you know, we're not being allowed to witness this process.
With a nonpartisan.
And she yelled, everybody back up.
Back up off the door.
What
So if you are Republican or Democrats, back up off the door. Only non-partisan at this point.
You never told people to sign out, so you don't know how many are in there. That is a lie.
Our job here is to do nothing but make sure the name that's on the ballot is the name that's on the poll book. That's all we're here for. And we're being blocked from doing our function. Excuse me? They do, but they don't have one at every precinct. And I've heard it said many times, as a Republican leaves, they're not replacing them with another Republican. They're stopping us from having fair representation at each table.
You have a flood of Republican challengers who were here earlier, who stepped out either to get lunch or go to the bathroom, and now they can't go back in. So they're frustrated, which is understandable, but security is coming out and saying, listen, we're at capacity, you're stuck out here.
As they're coming out, we try to go in and they say, sorry, we're at capacity, which if anybody knows, click a 5 out, 5 can go in. I mean, anyone who's been at Somerset Mall recently knows that's how it works. 5 people come out, 5 people go in.
Are you concerned that something's going wrong then? Or do you feel the process is working?
I'm not in there. I'm a Democratic representative. I can't get in either. And I was there this morning. And I'm a lawyer, and I can't get in.
Each side is only allowed 134 challengers in the room. Right now, both parties have more than 200. I think the Democrats had 268 and the Republicans had 230. And the nonpartisans had like 75, so they could have more people in there.
The number of challengers in the room far exceeded the allowed limit under state election law.
We're certified poll challengers and they're not letting us in.
What are they telling you?
They're telling us that they're not letting anyone else in but media and lawyers.
Just on the other side of those windows there have been pounding on the windows, at one point saying stop the count. Their objection right now is saying that there's various violations going on
And then you had one of the Fox News reporters who was there live on the floor next to me, not checking them, not saying, no, actually, they're here right now. I can watch them. I can see them.
We haven't seen any of that. We cannot independently confirm that, but the allegation is that these poll challengers or these challengers on the Republican side are not being allowed in to observe the counting process while the Democrats are. Again, we cannot confirm that.
I want to jump in the live shot and say, what the hell are you talking about? They're right here, but of course I can't. That's their show. And I couldn't wait to just set that record straight.
There was some misinformation that was really becoming now a part of a bigger conspiracy that somehow things were not operating properly in the TCF.
People were not only banging on the windows, but they were taking their phones and they were videotaping the counters as they were counting the ballots. Well, A, that's not allowed, and B, it was intrusive and bothersome. So the ballot counter said, listen, these folks outside the windows are videotaping me. So they taped up the windows.
One major hub for counting ballots in Detroit covered up the windows again with large pieces of cardboard.
It riled people up for sure, because all of a sudden, in the mind of somebody who thinks that they're already being shut out of a process, you put up a piece of paper so that they can't see it, then they're like, they're hiding something.
And so they wanted to protect and block the counting area. They didn't want anybody seeing the counting, even though these were observers who were legal observers that were supposed to be there.
I've heard from other clerks that this is actually standard. In some municipalities, they do tape up the windows when they count the absentee ballots. They cover them up so no one can see. And then you have people from both sides in there to ensure that, there's no foul play.
While my colleagues were in the counting room at the TCF Center observing what was happening there, I started to see all of these posts on Facebook going viral.
They're not letting us in.
Cheaters. That's what they are, cheaters. I knew they were going to cheat their way up to the top.
And that was sort of a claim that got rehashed over and over again.
I had some friends inside. They said they wouldn't even let them approach the table, and they said the few Republicans that were there were 3 Democrats for every 1 Republican.
2 media outlets just interviewed me. They said there are people in there. I said, yeah, they're treating them like crap.
The president said that in a national address Thursday of election week.
And our campaign has been denied access to observe any counting in Detroit.
We all witnessed the same thing, but people come away with different interpretations of what happened. And I don't know how you can misinterpret 450 challengers freely roaming the floor and then come around and claim that challengers were not allowed to be in the room. That just didn't happen.
A lot of our stories came down to fact-checking because there were so many of these claims that were going back and forth that we wanted to set the record straight, but we wanted to try to present it as objectively as possible, just the facts. And this is what happens. But there are people, who no matter what you tell them, sky's blue. Yeah, no, it's not. Sky's blue. No, it's not.
Detroit is another place. And I wouldn't say has the best reputation for election integrity.
You hear this regularly that, Detroit is messed up. Detroit can't handle an election. Detroit's got problems galore. Well, Detroiters who were there that night were just pissed. They're like, you know what? This last election, when it swung in your favor, you were okay with how we counted the ballots. This time around, you're having a fit. I interviewed a lot of people who were working. A lot of them were nervous. A lot of them were like, okay, it's always tense, but I just went about my job. But there was a lot of resentment at being questioned and scrutinized in that way.
In my past experience with that would be 2000 and the hanging chads in Florida. You didn't have Facebook and Twitter and all of these places where people could really spread as much fairy tales as they wanted.
For a lot of people, this wasn't rational. This was very personal. For a lot of people, they felt that they were losing something. They took these losses very personal. They took the theories of, massive fraud very personal because there was so much of this backstory that they didn't understand. This was their last stand, quote unquote. This was you're fighting for the soul of this country.
If you're a Detroit Free Press subscriber, you've gotten a push alert. Kristen Jordan Seamus is going to update us. What do we know?
Well, what we're hearing right now is that the Detroit Free Press has called Michigan for Joe Biden.
The Republicans and Donald Trump are leading right now in Georgia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. But those states are all still too close to call.
Thanks so much, Kristen.
Thank you.